You're watching The Ready Writer, a show where I get to speak to writers of all different genres, mediums, and experiences. The Ready Writer. Are you ready?
Welcome to The Ready Writer. Today's episode features Lisa Schermerhorn. Lisa is a life coach, public speaker, teacher, and a best-selling author. We started out talking about what inspired Lisa to become a life coach.
Well, I like to call myself a mindset coach. And the reason why is that I had a nervous breakdown 25 years ago. From the time I was a little girl, I had learning disabilities that were undiagnosed. So in kindergarten, everyone could read and write, do their numbers and everything, and I was lost. And if you don't have your foundation, you don't have anything. So everyone was going ahead of me, and I was spending summers in summer school. I was bullied a lot. I had very low self-esteem, and I was lost. So by the time I was 38, I just didn't understand my purpose of being here. And I was deeply depressed, and I was suicidal, and someone suggested a hypnotist. So I went to the hypnotist and I said, what are they going to make me quack like a duck? I didn't understand, but I thought I was desperate. I'll give it a shot because I was going to therapy 2 to 3 days a week. She changed my life. And what it did was I understood that she was talking to my unconscious self, the part of me where all the programs and the beliefs were stored. When we just talk like this, we don't have access to that information. So she was able to get to the root cause of my depression quickly. And when I had that experience, I went on then to study other things. I went on to become a master practitioner in NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming. I studied with people all around the world, ancient techniques as well as cutting edge, and kind of made it my own. And I had my own journey to go through. So I thought there's got to be other people who have been through what I have. So I decided to become the person that I was looking for 20 years ago.
Not only is Lisa a one-on-one coach, she also teaches through public speaking. Lisa shares how she started her speaking career.
I moved to New Hampshire, and someone said to me, well, the best way to get to know potential clients is to speak in front of many people instead of trying to do one-to-one. So I started speaking at lunch and learns. I joined a Toastmasters. For people who don't know what Toastmasters is, it's an international organization. And I started speaking there. And then there were people there who were professional speakers who then guided me to introduce me to other people who were looking for speakers. And then suddenly I was up in front of 100 people out of nowhere. And I was like, I kind of like this thing. This is really fun. So it just kind of evolved. And the more and more I got in front of people, the more I enjoyed it. And then, COVID happened and everything shut down. And all of my work, I had offices locally where I was seeing people, and then suddenly I had to see people online. And now that's the biggest part of my work is basically hypnotizing people and working with people's unconscious mind online.
Lisa is the best-selling author of And Every Belief is a Lie. She discusses her inspiration in writing the book and the meaning behind the title.
Yeah, so if you look at the title, I should have my book. Oh, here it is. If you look at the title, the word belief, the word lie is in the middle of it. So we are programmed from the time we are born. And even actually before then, there's something called epigenetics where we can inherit your ancestors' trauma and belief systems. I work with people going back up to 10 generations. So there are people who say, oh, we just came into this world and as this perfect child and our parents were the ones who really screwed us up. And I say, no, it goes back much further than that. But we have our parents' belief systems, we have school, we have our culture, we have, did you grow up in an urban or a rural environment, religion, some religions are very strict and they dictate, who you're supposed to date, what you wear, what you eat. I mean, there's so many variables, and that becomes part of your programming because your brain is different from the time that you're born through around 23 years old. You're still very malleable. And that's when things kind of really start to gel. So all of those belief systems and traumas and things that have happened to you, especially money issues. Money's a big one. You have money issues, and then you have these belief systems that money doesn't grow on trees. There's all these different beliefs around money, and then you're an adult and you keep sabotaging yourself, and you don't know why. So it goes back to these belief systems where we sabotage ourselves, we create our own reality, and then we have to go back and fix it. Where do these beliefs come from? And what if this belief of scarcity isn't mine? I had a grandfather who survived the Depression and had to support his family, 7 sisters and brothers. So where do these beliefs come from? They're not always ours. So it's really important to be able to go back and look at all the different pieces of the puzzle that brought us to who we are today. And so the book, going back to your question, I had been trying to write a book for 15 years. And every time I sat down to write, I just had blocks. And one day I was like, that's it. I do this for other people. I need to use my own stuff on me. So I made a list of all the reasons why I shouldn't write a book. And I went back to that belief of not being very smart, feeling that I was stupid. And so who am I to write a book? What is it that I have to say that other people haven't said before? I had this huge list, and I just started releasing them one by one. And then I had to forgive myself for believing that. And as soon as I forgave myself, I didn't really understand up until then the power of forgiveness. And when I forgave myself, the title showed up and the book poured out of me. Literally, I was writing 5 hours a day, like nonstop for 5 months. It was insane. I just couldn't stop. And this was from someone who struggled in school, who didn't believe in that I was smart enough to write it. And it all came out. And I was like, well, okay, who cares if my grammar isn't perfect? That's what editors are for, right? So you don't have to do everything yourself. Whatever you're not particularly good at, you can always hire someone or ask a friend to help you out. It doesn't have to be, we all have strengths and weaknesses. So the book is really a compilation of stories of my life with tools and techniques that I've used to overcome those. And then also exercises for people to do. I remember reading, for those people familiar with, what's her name? She passed away, Debbie Ford. She wrote a book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And I fell in love with the format of her book. And she inspired me to write a book in a similar format where she told her personal story so people could understand where I was coming from, explaining the psychology around it, and then having these tools. And I still talk about one of the exercises that was in her book, changed my life. Because I had this exercise, we all have shadows, right? We all have these parts of us that we don't want to accept. We don't want to acknowledge those parts of us. So we often stuff it down and suppress it. And so there was this part of me that I didn't want to acknowledge because I thought that part was bad. And when I did this meditation, I looked at this part and it looked like it was slimy and like really disgusting, and it was oozing, but I honored it and I touched it and it became this angel. It was ethereal and it flew away. And I thought, my greatest wounds are my greatest gifts, because no one knows that kind of pain like I did or you did, what you experienced in your life. And when you overcome it, that makes you an expert in it. And so therefore, no one else knows that better than you. And that is your purpose. And so I found that the book was really cathartic for me to write about my own personal journey. But at the same time, I get so much feedback from people saying, thank you, because you made this real for me, that this is something that I can do now in my life, that I can change things, and tools that are cutting edge, like different types of tools that people can use. And these are tools that I still use every day with my clients.
If you believe you may not be living your authentic self, Lisa shares how to release the lies and live your true self without any guilt.
You know, it's interesting in saying that, because here's the thing. We're born into a religion. We're born into a culture. Did I choose that? And what happens if I decide I don't believe in that, or I don't want to be part of that? So it's interesting, because a lot of people experience that. And here's what happens. When you have a culture and you don't want to feel like you're part of that, then it threatens the rest of the family. It threatens the culture. And so what happens if everyone does that? There'll be none of us left. So when someone leaves a culture or leaves that belief system, it can be very painful. It can be very painful. At the same time, when there's dysfunctional belief systems that are part of the culture. And going back to the old thing where they talked about the Hatfields and the McCoys battling over each other for 4 generations, and they finally asked them, why are you fighting? And they said, we don't know. It's just because our parents did it, and our grandparents did it, and our great-great-grandparents did it. So oftentimes we don't even know why we're doing things anymore. So I invite people to go inward, and if they want to embrace part of something, because there's a beauty in our culture, there's a beauty in the belief systems that came in. They were there out of necessity for a reason. But it's up to the individual as to what they want to do with it, because when you leave a culture behind, it's also part of who you are, right? And so it's like that dismissing of that part of who you are. So like when I did that exercise of honoring it, it's like, okay, I don't have to act on that if I don't want to, but I have to honor that that's what made me me, honor my ancestors. And these are the gifts. Like I had someone who did some bad things to me. And in order to forgive them, I made a list of all the things that I was like them, because it was family. And I realized that I was far more like them than not like them. And I had to forgive myself for that, and forgive them, and then honor. And it made me stand stronger in who I am. And it made me own who I am at a much deeper level.
Being there is no book publishing school, Lisa was asked how she learned how to get her book published. Ironically, Lisa shared that she went to a book publishing school. Lisa shares her book publishing journey.
Well, it's
What was it like
interesting you
for you?
say that, because I was at a boot camp. It was a 3-day boot camp through Corey Poirier at Blue Talks, and he invited a fellow in called the Self-Publishing School. And he spoke about it, and I thought, okay, they offer all these resources. Now, there's book coaches, there's all kinds of people, because there was so much about the publishing industry that I didn't know anything about. I didn't know about all the different types of editors. I didn't know about formatting. I thought just writing the book was going to be the challenging part, and it wasn't by a long shot. So the writing of the book, once I got through the blocks to write it, that was the easy part. Then it was like, oh, how do I break it into the proper chapters? Is it edited properly? Do I have the description on the back enticing? You got to get a good cover of the book. Make sure it's something that is alluring, that makes someone want to write it. Is the title okay? Is that something? There's so many things. So they had a network of people to kind of, throw things at each other. And here's the thing that I found that's the most important. You have to go with your own gut, because there are people who are going to tell you what works and what doesn't work. And yes, there's a foundation of things. But ultimately, if you have a story that you want to tell, and it's important for you to get that out there, you want to look at your motivation as why you're doing it. Are you doing this as to become an expert at something, such as being a coach, where you're creating this expertise? Do you want to be a best-selling author? Are you doing this as a lead magnet? What is the purpose of writing it? Because there's lots of different reasons that people want to write a book. You have to know that ahead of time. Because if you're getting in it to make money, there's not a lot of money to be made. It actually costs you a lot of money to publish a book. I decided to self-publish it through Amazon. It was a way for me to get it out there, because when you go through publishers, there's a lot of rejection that happens. There's a lot of people judging you. And I said, you know what? I don't want to be judged. I just want to get my story out, and I want to get my message out. I also, when you sign with a publisher, you don't own your content anymore. They do. So then it's up to them how fast or slow, or how they decide to, move this through your book, how much they're going to promote it. If they have someone really hot, your book's not going to be a priority for them. And then there's other editors that do a combination, where you do some of it and they do some of it. So there's so many options out there. It's important to really research the publishing industry to see what works best for you.
Lisa shares what she learned about her first time publishing books and some insight for inspiring authors.
That's a hard question, because you know what? It actually, everything came together much easier than I thought it would be. I think the most challenging thing for me was the idea of getting it to bestseller, because I was so busy working hard on getting the book published that I didn't put a lot of thought into, okay, now that it's published, how do I get it into the hands of people? And then, what I did was I got myself on as many podcasts as possible. And I found that I really enjoyed doing podcasts a lot. I felt that these work for me, help me spread the word. But there's a lot of other ways to spread the word. And you really have a year. You have a year to really promote your book. And once your book is past a year, it's kind of this bell curve, and it kind of loses its enticement for someone to want to have you on their podcast with a brand new book. Now, does it help me to get on a podcast or get on a stage and say she's a best-selling author? Yes, it does. That's one of the reasons why I did it, was to give me credibility. But I don't have to be a best-selling author. I can just say I'm an author. What is my motivation? What is your motivation for writing the book? And some people just write a book for themselves. Some people do it as a lead magnet, and it's 20 pages. It was really funny, because when I wrote my book, I didn't realize the font. That's because there's traditional sizes of books, that there's a certain amount of pages that it needs to be. Well, with my older eyes, I used a larger font in Word when I typed it. I was like, oh, this is cool. I've got 230 pages. And they're like, well, when they reduced it to the font, which is 11, which is what is generally in most books, it shrunk it down a lot. And it freaked me out. And then I said, you know what? I've said what I need to say. I don't want to add any more. The book is complete. I feel complete about this. So we're going to double space it. We're going to do a larger font. And what I got back from feedback was, thank you. It's a quick and easy read. You didn't fill it with a lot of extra stuff. And I'm really grateful. So meanwhile, editors, there are people who will say it needs to be this, that, and that. You can break the rules. So as long as it's yours, you want to make sure that it's yours and everything you want it to be.
Lastly, Lisa was asked which author, dead or alive, she would enjoy a conversation with.
What's interesting is going back to Debbie Ford and talking about, she inspired me, and she wrote many books, and she inspired the format. If I had not read her books, I think I would have been more intimidating. Like, I was so passionate about the way she wrote, and She was on stages. She was the person that I was looking to be. So she inspired me. So I was like, if this worked for her, I'm going to do it my version of her format because it works for her. And I went through and read every single one of her books. And unfortunately, she passed of leukemia a number of years ago. But I wish that I could have had an opportunity to sit down and ask her, how did you come up with these exercises? How did you come up with this format? What was it that, that inspired you? That, because there's this whole pattern of now going down, and maybe this format will inspire someone else to write in that same way. Because books shouldn't be difficult to read. It should be an enjoyable experience where people have an opportunity to be. Stories are very important. They make you relatable. So when you're writing a book, you don't want to be lecturing at people. You want them to feel what you're feeling, experience what you're experiencing, and bring them in so that they care about you as a character in the book. They care whether you live or die. They care about whether or not you're successful in something. That engages people. If you don't do that in your book, it's not going to be successful unless you're writing, a textbook, and that's fine. It depends on what you're looking for.
That is the end of this episode of The Ready Writer. We thank our guest, Lisa Schermerhorn. We also thank you, the guests, for watching another episode of The Ready Writer.